try to describe the entire phenomena around drug prohibition, but most notably in my mind, drug testing. So I think in a 1972 New England Journal of Medical article, Lester coined the phrase psychopharmacological McCarthyism. And to a large degree, from my point of view, you take an otherwise perfectly good worker who's productive day one, and then the next day you give them a drug test and you find some inert metabolites in their body, that the next day that they're fired and they're considered a bad employee is the definition of psychopharmacological McCarthyism. That the test, the scientific test, is determining the virtual worth of that individual. The thing that people are being judged on the quality of their excrement and not on the quality of their education, their civic mindedness, their skill sets, etc. So Dale had did a lecture some months ago on drug testing and wanted to do it again for this audience and wanted to build around that. And so each panel member is looking at different components of drug testing and how they profoundly, legally, morally, financially impact individuals who are on the wrong side of that chemical analysis. Dr. Dale Gieringer.
I actually prepared a much longer talk than this because there's a lot of information out there to be had. It's available, fortunately, on the CD that came with the conference, and it's going to be posted on the website too. I'm not going to give the full talk because it could go on for an hour. I will try to give an abbreviated description of the outline of the basic facts about drug testing specifically for marijuana and why it basically doesn't work. And I think drug testing is one of the most misunderstood technologies out there. Everybody assumes it's like an alcohol breathalyzer and there's something suspect about somebody who tests positive for marijuana. Just ain't the case. There is no scientific basis for it. It's, in my opinion, scientific fraud. And of course, the case study I always like to start off with is Ross Rabagliati, who won the gold medal at the Olympics for snowboarding and tested positive for marijuana. And fortunately, they hadn't yet made that disqualification for winning the Olympics, but nonetheless, it shows that you can be at absolute peak performance and have dirty urine, so-called. Well, why is this? I'm going to talk now and give you a quick overview of the nature of marijuana testing. In particular, I'm going to be looking at urine and blood testing for cannabis and try to explain just what the tests do and what they measure, because there's a lot of confusion on that score, and it can be cleared up with a few graphs, hopefully. So, when you're talking about urine testing, you have to, or drug testing for marijuana at all, you have to distinguish two different cases. There's the case of one-time use. People who are clean, haven't smoked for a long time, and then they smoke. And then there's the chronic users who are daily users. And they have, in the chronic users, you have buildup of metabolites that test positive for much longer, basically, than for one-time users. This graph here, specifically, these are from the very few well-controlled studies that were done with single-time users. Came into the test perfectly clear, and then they monitored their marijuana use. I'm looking at the urine. What they measure in urine tests is a non-psychoactive metabolite referred to as THC, COOH, carboxy-THC, THCS, as it's sometimes called. As I say, completely non-psychoactive metabolite. The two middle lines, the green line and the red line, are typical examples that I chose from all the subjects in these studies, showing what usually happens with one-time users. And you can find that, okay, first of all, I have to explain that there is a cutoff 50 nanograms per milliliter is the standard cutoff that's used for most drug tests. And usually you do not get a number saying you're at 65 or 35 or 50. You just get a pass or fail. And that pass or fail is usually built around 50 nanograms SIM. So if you're above 50 nanograms, you fail. If you're below, you pass. And you'll notice that for the green and red cases, everybody here took one NIDA joint. And you'll notice that they tested positive in the hundreds of nanograms there for over 24 hours. And then actually up to almost 48 hours, 2 days, before they went down under that line. You should also notice that the levels fluctuate and that they go above the line and below the line at different places. So this is very tricky technology. You can't assume that you're clean just because you've gone down below the line once. Also note, there was an exceptional case, same study, same dose. The line on the bottom, subject E, never tested positive at all. All right? Never tested positive. Now, another study, all right, the top line. Somebody was given a strong oral dose of THC, sort of a double dose of Gieringer. And you'll notice they went way up, and they were testing positive as late as basically 6 days after the test. One-time users can therefore normally will clear up in a day or two, but 6 days is possible and more. We've heard credible reports of normal of up to 2 weeks for one-time use. Okay? Now, that's the one-time users. Here are the chronic users. Okay? When you have chronic users, this is a different study. The metabolite is detectable much longer. Here you see it going out to, at the 50 nanogram level, out to 32 days on one of them. The shortest one was like 4 or 5 days. And chronic users have been reported to test positive. I met somebody just here at this conference who reported 141 days. 88 days is possible. It's the longest I found in the literature. It could go on for a very long time. And again, you see this fluctuation up and down from time to time. Okay, and this gives you a rough idea of how long it actually takes to clear up. This is sort of the same data in a different graph, but it shows how many days until people clear. And you'll notice the green bars are at 100 nanograms per milliliter. That's less sensitive than the standard. The red bars are 20 nanograms, which is more sensitive than the standard cutoff. But you'll see at the green, at the low standard, most people clear up in about 1 to 10 days if they are chronic users, but they linger out to 50 days in certain cases. And if you up the detection threshold and use look at the red bars instead, usually it takes like 3 weeks to clear up and maybe out to 80 days. So there's a very large variability here. Now I want to just contrast these days and weeks of detection time with the actual impairment period for marijuana. I don't know whether these graphs came through as quickly as well as I'd like, but to summarize the upper left graph there, it basically, this is a look at the studies on how long marijuana impairment can be detected in the lab. And generally, 150, they see strongest effects in the first 150 minutes. Significant and impairing effects. When you go on beyond that to about 4 hours or so, there are detectable effects, but not necessarily things to be terribly concerned about. And when you get out to 8 hours, basically you can't detect anything anymore. So it's really the first 2.5 hours are the most concerned. And certainly only the first 4 at most. Now, look at the graph down at the bottom left. This shows how long it takes for the marijuana to show up in your urine if you are clean in the first place. All right? Going clean and you smoke marijuana. As you'll notice, it takes around 4 hours or more before the marijuana shows up in your urine. So if you're a one-time user and you are testing positive, you've probably gone beyond the impairment period already.